The turnout here tonight says exactly how people feel about the significant day, June 16. 20 years now have passed since the events of that historic day, June 16, 1976, when the world watched with horror as youth who had taken to the streets to protest Afrikaans as a medium of instruction met with a brutal response. School children displayed courage and moral conviction to change the course of history. Let us reflect back.
1976, education officials entrenched Afrikaans as the medium of instruction in all schools. Delegation after delegation to the officials went unheeded. Inevitably, the underground rumblings against oppression erupted as young scholars took to the streets. Enough is enough. Afrikaans instruction was the last straw. Issues at the core of the protest were inferior education, known as Bantu education, and the apartheid system, suppressive, aggressive, and dehumanizing. This protest on June the 16th, 1976 was completed in 1994, the first democratic elections in South Africa.
Tonight we reflect as we commemorate June 16, 1976, which is today a holiday called National Youth Day. Let us talk to members of families who were affected and lost their loved ones. Antoinette, as we look at that picture, the famous picture that captured worldwide attention, you are running next to Mabuza carrying Hector. Take us back to the day, the thoughts in your mind as you were running.
As I was running, really, I was very, very angry because I couldn't believe that they they could shoot us, you know, because we thought we were protesting peacefully. Now that we had a grievance about Africans, I was very, very, very cross.
What did you see? Just take us back, just reflect on that day.
Actually, we were standing, you know, next to the houses because we were hiding ourselves there. So when I come out from one of the houses that I was hiding, I saw Hector. And I said to my friend, gee, look who's here. And I called Hector and I said to him, just wait here next to me, then we'll find a way back home. And after 2 minutes, we had a shot. And then the people who were before us, they dug down, so we also followed and dug down. But later, I saw a group of boys coming towards me. Then my heart was beating so fast. And I just turned around to look where Hector was, and he was not there. Then I went closer to that group of boys who were coming towards me, and I saw a top of a shoe of Hector. And I screamed. So I don't know really where the gentleman who carried Hector came from. He just came and grabbed Hector, and I ran with him. And he said to me he was going to the nearest clinic. So we ran there, and on our way, a car just stopped in front of us, and the lady said to us, come, we'll take you to the clinic or hospital.
That was the car that a reporter, in fact, was driven by a reporter, was Sophie Timmer and them were in that car. Sam Zima, you are here. You are the gentleman who took the famous picture, or the picture that is known worldwide. Were you also with Sophie at that time in that car?
Correct.
Taking that picture, take us back to that time.
What happened is that the students were marching from Naledi High to Morris Isaacson and Scanan Twana, Ngungunyana, Shawelo. When they arrived at Orlando West High, while we were still waiting for the student to come out from the Orlando High West, a boy came running, a student. He said, "Gents, which means that the police are coming now." We saw the convoy of the police coming from Orlando West Police Station. On the arrival, a white policeman, he wanted to know What Makiele Yiso as a student? A Hegeleman said, dream many tell which means that they must get away. It was giving them for 3 minutes to get away from there. And then the students start singing Kosi Sigelela Africa. Then the man pulled out his gun and he shot to the student direct. That was the opening of the fire. So the hell was loose. All the police, black and white police, were shooting at the student. The students scattered and ran up to the hill of Beverly Hill, you know, where is now the houses. Yeah. When they came down from the hill, they were having stones now. They were retaliating to the police. The police got into their car. One of them remained behind. When he was trying to run away, he hit the electrical pole. He stopped there. So the student got rid of him there.
That picture, though, when did you take that picture?
The picture of Hector Peterson, then I come to that. The first shot and the second shot, I saw Hector Peterson was down. Then Mbuyiso Makubo picked him up. He ran the direction where the press car was parked. So as he was coming, I was with him there. I took the pictures of the Hector Peterson 6 times until they reached the car where Hector Peterson was moved into the press car.
Were you taking that picture knowing that it would make history, or were you just taking it not even knowing what would happen?
That was the first victim. I took that picture with the knowledge that this is a correct picture showing the events, what was happening, the true reflection of what was happening there. The students were shot, definitely.
Without capitalizing on that picture and asking you, have you made any money out of the picture?
Nothing at all. I did not make anything but the picture.
Any award, Nobel Peace Prize for the picture?
The award that I get was from South African Association of Journalists. That was sponsored by Shell Company. That's the only award I got, the best news picture of the year 1976.
But did you feel guilty when you took that picture, and now that it's being capitalized on?
Well, it's only then that I realized that the picture was great.
Yeah.
But then I did not notice that the picture was very great. But thereafter, you know, after taking that picture, I realized that it's a very good picture. I removed my film immediately from the camera. I gave to the driver to rush it to the press. Moffat Zungu was in the dark room there, processed the picture immediately after I've seen what was happening. He took the press car and rushed to the scene. He was saying to me, Sam, you have got a great picture. That's great. The picture is great.
And that picture to this day is still used throughout. Let me get to you, Janet. Your father was the first white victim. He was working in Soweto. You had to explain?
My father was involved with, also in terms of the struggle, his main struggle was with education as well. He was involved with a lot of people in Soweto from different angles. He was a sociologist. He just completed his thesis on how young Africans think. So he was involved in terms of interviewing young black people. He assisted them, those that were less fortunate. He started up a cripple care center to assist them in helping themselves, like a self-help workshop. His fight was with the government of the day to equalize education on all levels. And in terms of the Soweto riots, the day that it actually took place, obviously my family, myself, we were very shocked, we were very confused at the events, because he was loved by all those people. So obviously it was very confusing and ironic. He wasn't part of, he certainly wasn't the enemy. He was
just caught in the crossfire.
He was caught in the crossfire. Yeah, we've asked questions for years because at the time nobody could really answer us. It was total turmoil. He's been referred to as the unsung hero of 1976, and that's exactly what he was.
How do you feel about June 16?
Well, I feel that, obviously I wish it had never taken place, but obviously it had to take place in order for us to get to where we are today.
And you feel your father contributed to it?
Oh, definitely. He was very involved in the struggle for education.
Are you bitter with those who killed your father?
No, I'm not bitter. You must understand, we were brought up in a home that was very, very democratic. And we were probably as angry with the situation at the time than most of the people who were rioting, because we were educated on that level. You know, our father was a great man, and he He brought us up knowing that it was wrong that was going on at the time, that people should be allowed, that everyone is equal in this world. And so how could we, I realized, I know what the fight was all about, and I know that there had to be a fight. Obviously, at the time I was bitter, I was angry and confused because I feel he shouldn't have been killed. He shouldn't have been a part of it, even in the crossfire. He just shouldn't have been there.
Mrs. Makubu, Muisa, where is he today? I mean, when we look at that picture, his face grimacing, carrying Hector, a dying Hector, the pain in his face, where is he today?
I don't know.
You don't know? You've not heard, when last did you hear from him?
June 1978.
So he left the country after that?
Yeah, he left for Botswana, and then he was granted a scholarship in Nigeria, so I was told, and he went to Nigeria. That's where he disappeared.
So you don't know whether he's still alive or dead?
Not at all. And I'm dying to know what happened to him.
Your feelings?
June 16 to me has mixed feelings. I'm both proud that he took part in it, and I'm sad that I lost him to, I don't know where, you know. I don't know what happened to him. For instance, I'm sure if I say what I'm going to say, which I'm going to say, it's going to sound unfair to the people here. But I envy them because they know what happened to their people, you know. I wish if he is dead, I would have buried him. Even if I didn't bury him, I would like to know what happened to him.
Is anyone helping you find out where he is and what has happened?
Not really. Because if there was anybody who was helping me, it's 20 years now. I should have known what happened, but I've been to the Truth Commission. Maybe something will happen now.
Are you going to try
I've been to the
You have
Truth
been
Commission,
there?
yes.
Mrs. Machine, you're also going to testify at the Truth Commission?
I am not sure. I haven't registered because I'm not even sure if I'll be doing a right thing. I won't be, maybe I'll be touching wrong things because Gigi died in a country, in a strange country, not where he had gone for the struggle.
He was the most wanted student leader of 76. Why?
Yes, he was the most wanted because I think because he was the president of the SSRC.
We have his friends that we're going to talk to later on, Kotso and others. But when you think of June 16, what does it mean to you?
To me, June 16 is a great day. It will be a great day until we die. And we are happy it was there because we wouldn't be in this new South Africa. Because of June 16 today, we can say, we can do anything, whatever you like to do.
Should we forgive and forget now?
Yeah, we should forget. But I'm still curious to know what killed Jesse because it was not natural death.
What have you been told killed him?
I was told it was natural death, but it wasn't because when we saw him, he had one eye out and he had a number of wounds in his body.
Who are you suspecting killed him? I'm beginning to hear that you're suspecting something else happened.
Well, I wouldn't know who killed him, but something had happened. Okay, I would suspect the Afrikaners because for a long time, Gigi was not known where he was.
I'd like to move on to the next point. It's a sad story, obviously, but as a mother, your message to young people in South Africa. Young people got us to where we are today. Should we be reminding these young people in the audience about June 16? Shouldn't we forget and move on?
We should remind them because there are many things that are happening in our days, especially with students. They go to school at 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock they are out of school. So my message to students is to go to school because before 76, students used to go from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock with a study period. We need learned people in our country because we cannot afford people from other countries coming to work in South Africa and get better jobs whilst our children are roaming the streets in Johannesburg.
In fact, Seth is there. Seth, you also were one of the student leaders, and you have a school. I see your children are here. In my opinion, some of the most beautiful-looking students in the country. Do you really... Do you feel June 16 the children should be reminded about it? And as an educator and as a student leader those years, what do you say?
Look, Felicia, I don't have mixed feelings about June 16. I have one feeling. And my feeling is that those mothers who are sitting next to you there lost their children for a particular cause. And there is no other festival that we can have except getting into our pens and the papers and start learning and reconstructing and developing this country on education. There might be some people maybe taking a ride on the day itself, but I'm very strong that now there's still a lot of discipline. CS's mother's just said something very important. The discipline of the youth 1976, that class of 76, it was quite classy in its discipline, in its way of doing things. That is why, up to the end of the struggle of those days, we still had parents supporting us all the way. And we never had parents who were enemies to us. But we see this common in our schools today. We see our schools being broken. If there's one thing that we protected, was the classroom, was the gates of the schools, so that there must be no one entering those schools, including the system itself. We will rather go out there and hide instead of exposing our schools or exposing other students. And if that culture could come back, the culture that says, I belong to that school makes my future, and people died for that school, then we shall have attained something.
After the break, we will talk to student activists, journalists, teachers, and alumni of 76. How did it all start, and what does it really mean, and which way forward? That's what we're going to concentrate on right now. Khotso, how did it all start? I mean, everybody's saying, I am curious. I was not there. I want to know how these guys plotted. What happened? How did the teachers feel? How did the parents feel? That's what I'd like to hear now.
I don't know really where to start, but firstly, I think we should remember that at the time we were in an environment of Bantu education. And at the beginning of the year, Dr. Andries Strenicht, the late Dr. Andries Strenicht, insisted through the apartheid parliament anyway that black schools would have to be taught in Afrikaans, especially within white South Africa at the time. After such schools as Bella Higher Primary Schools had gone on strikes, and ultimately the decision was reached as to what's to be done. We reached the decision at Orlando DOCC. The community center there.
And where the decision was going to be?
The decision was that we were going to go to the streets. Of course, we must admit the fact that we did not envisage a probability of the violence that really took place at the time. And quite luckily, I have some of my colleagues at the time, Mefi Morobe there, Majagatata Mokwena, Dan Munsisi and Seth, they could be able to fill up the spaces.
Let's talk, Mefi. Mefi. Fill us in.
Yes, I think what Khotso is saying basically does help in trying to understand some of the things that were done then, because we only had about 3 days to organize the events of June 16th, arising from the meeting that took place on the 13th of June, where we formed an action committee, where we had representatives from different high schools and secondary schools in Soweto. Now, as he says that most of us in high schools were not really affected. For some of us, we're in our last year at high school, but the hour for sacrifice had come, and we felt that it was an important thing for us to consider to organize students so that we can arrange this protest. And this took us about 3 days, and we kept it away from our teachers. There's my physical science teacher there, you know. I still have to explain to him what I was doing on the day. And we kept this away from our teachers because at that point we felt that...
you didn't trust them, is that it? Be honest.
I think to some extent there was that element because as you would know that at that time to organize in high schools was not something that we could do openly, and the authorities were very stringent in terms of how they applied some of their rules there to keep political activity. But Morris Isaacson, Naledi High and Skanantwana were some of the better schools in terms of allowing for these activities to take place. But we kept it away and kept it amongst ourselves as students until, in fact, the events broke on June 16.
Matata. Your recollections? Yes, please.
Well, unlike Mefi and Khotso, my school was not very political.
And your school was?
Orlando High School. It was more...
Hey, what do you say? Kambule was not political?
No, not much. No, it was political in a different way, though. I have to say that we're more academic in many ways, so that now the turnover from my school to the demonstration on that day was very low. So I had to literally just take about maybe 100 people with me from the school while other people were taking exams. So I think it's a function, basically, of SASM not organizing well enough in my school than that they did in Morris Isaacson, Naledi High, and other schools.
I'm coming to the panel there. You're talking about the teachers. Mr. Mazbuku, knowing that your students literally turned the country around, I heard of one teacher saying, we were so fearful even of the students in those years. Were you? What was happening? Did you ultimately know what was happening, what was going to happen?
To say we knew exactly what was happening would be untrue. However, there was a measure of knowledge that there was not going to be school on that day. As Murphy says, at Morris Isaacson, there was a measure of trust between students and teachers. And this predates 1976 by far. I could tell a whole lot of stories of how collaboration between teachers and students of that school actually frustrated efforts of the system to try and nail students who were engaged in political activities. However, the information that we got from Mr. Matabate, who was the headmaster then, we were sworn to secrecy. And I must say, the magnitude of what happened, we never even guessed at. Because on the day that it all happened, I remember, although I used to run assembly, on that day Mr. Malibani was running the assembly, and all the students in their normal uniform, looking very normal, and praying as they usually prayed. They did everything correctly on that day, until at the end, one student jumped onto the platform. I don't know how much one can carry under your jacket, but all the placards and things came out and we knew it was happening and we had to give way.
Have they lost trust in you, the adults? Have the students lost trust in the adults, really, saying, we've waited for so long? Was Afrikaans really what sparked it, or was there something bigger than Afrikaans?
I think Afrikaans was what broke the camel's neck, as a camel's back. I think there were a whole lot of things that had been voiced over the years. I think the arrogance of the officials at the time acted as the trigger when the firearm was loaded and it all exploded. I don't think it was just Afrikaans, because soon after that, what started on that day as Afrikaans immediately panned out to be what it really was about. Apartheid education and the whole apartheid system. You can see this if you study the placards and the news items as the days progressed. The news items quickly changed over from simply saying away with Afrikaans to away with Bantu education, away with apartheid, away with the system. I remember this. I remember this quite clearly because although the teachers for a long time stood on the sidelines, perplexed, not knowing how to respond to what the students were doing, Gradually, it began to sink into their minds that they were in fact involved. It began to sink into the minds of the teachers that they had to take some action. I remember what sparked the meeting of the 12th of September 1977 was me, who was acting as principal whilst, as deputy principal whilst the deputy principal was away, was coming back to the school and finding one of the teacher, Mr. Jeff Leketo, bleeding because the police just walked into the school, and when they asked where Tsietsi was, and he said this and that, they beat the hell out of him. I found him bleeding, and at that moment, I knew we had to take some action. I phoned Mr. Nkondo, phoned Mr. Matabat, and said, we need a meeting to discuss this. That's when the teachers began to realize they had to get involved. And from that meeting on, the teachers were fully involved.
The reporters of the time, Duma, you are one of the most trusted reporter. Guess you are close in age to the students, that's why. You are with the World, which was ultimately banned.
Yeah, Felicia, actually what happened is after the meeting at DOCC, a bunch of students showed up at my home very late at night, and Tsietsi was among them. Because I had covered school sports at that time, there's another reporter, Gabu Tukwana, who's an editor of the New Nation. Him and I had kind of been with the students throughout the past 3 years because we had been covering school sports, and they kind of knew us. So they showed up at night and said to me there was something very big that was going to happen. They didn't want me to tell anybody, not even my editor. They just wanted me to be at a certain place on Wednesday, the 16th, which was kind of difficult because I had to go back to where I kept on asking them what it was, and they didn't tell me. So they went to Gabu, and they did the same thing also. So there was this major story that was happening, but I couldn't tell anybody because I didn't even know what the story was. So on Tuesday, I went to work, and I told my editor that there was this big story, but I didn't know what it was. And it was kind of difficult because I wanted a car and a photographer. And my news editor at that time, we were not seeing eye to eye. And he sent Willie Bukala instead. He said, go and look at what is happening, because none of us really knew what was happening. And they sent me to an official opening of Orlando Home that day. But by 10 or 11 a.m. on the 16th, nobody could continue with any other story because just the news just broke. But I thought the interesting thing was that even though the students really trusted Gabu and myself, they did not tell us what they were going to do. So we had to actually stumble into June 16. But later on, I think Gabu and myself were the ones who had to get the press statements from the students. I'm sorry, guys, to say this. They were not very well written. So we had to kind of improve to them, and it got us into a lot of problems. And I think people like Moffat Zungu, Willie Bukala, and a lot of other journalists ended up getting arrested later on, and myself, of course, because of that association with the students. So the police would come and take us and beat the hell out of us sometimes and ask us where the students were. It didn't also help the fact that when the students needed money, they came to us. It didn't help when they wanted to hire.
And you're not getting too much money either.
Well, we had to go around, and I have to say this, and I don't think some of us have said it very well. The Soweto business community really came through for us as young people then. I mean, some of the people that were being accused publicly as sellouts and who worked for UBC are the very same people we used to go to at night, because the students couldn't. Boma Jagatata didn't trust that if they approached some of those people, the police wouldn't follow them. But we could go and say, give us 200 rands, the students need money. And of course, we had to hire the cars with our driver's licenses. And sometimes there were some students who had driver's licenses and who could drive. You had to give them the car, and they disappeared somewhere at night, and you wouldn't see them until after 3 days. And I mean, all that time, you just had to pray that the car came back because your name was in.
There was chaos. Let me hear from some other reporters. Namavendi, let's talk.
Well, I thought...
Oh, you're mic'd up. That's fine. Go ahead.
Well, I thought I should read a few paragraphs from a book that will attempt to depict the problems of the time, and in particular for the youth, just to let them know what went wrong or what went on in those days.
Why don't you start, let them hear?
Oops.
Sure.
During the Carter administration, a number of black congressmen visited South Africa. At an informal dinner held in their honor by one of the activists, Talk veered, of course, to South Africa's independence. Questions were thrown about and asked. Then one of the Americans, Congressman William Gray, asked, "But you blacks, are you ready for it?" The question bordered on arrogance. Typical of all self-styled facilitators, he had given the situation a casual peep and concluded the patient was far from delivery. But the Soweto leader, Mr. Musala, in his gentle and wise manner of talking, saved the night. Does an expectant woman make an appointment with the baby to be born?
Wow.
He asked. While the woman may have a say insofar as conceiving, she absolutely has no say on how and when the child is to be born. How does one therefore say to a people, now get ready, a new society is about to be born?
We'll come back after the break and talk about should we celebrate or mourn June 16th. Will we trivialize the pain and anguish of June 16 by celebration? Or is mourning digging up old wounds? Azapo calls June 16 National Resistance Day. The ANC calls it National Youth Day. The PAC calls it Soweto Uprising. How should we remember June 16? Let me hear. Let us hear from more students who are there.
June 16, for instance, does not necessarily belong to, you can say, Azapo or the ANC or the PAC. It belongs to the people of South Africa. It doesn't belong... So it is a people who began to stand up at a particular remote corner of the township in South Africa, which was Soweto, where the explosion actually started. But now it spread throughout the country like lava, you know, and it embraced each and every township throughout South Africa. Like I say, it's the day that belongs to South Africa. And in the calendar presently, it's known as the South African Youth Day, which in essence make the youth of this country very, very proud. Now, it's a statement because it says, when there was a problem, you know, the students and the youth of this country did not fail to respond to the challenges of the moment. You could hold a commemoration service, that would be fine, you know. You could ululate and sing, you know, songs of praise, and actually celebrate. There is nothing wrong with that. Because the march that started, the march that culminated in 1976, actually more or less ended in 1994 with the elections. So most of the student activists, in one way or the other, they continued with the struggle. There is Mabuza-Suttle, there is Mefi Morobi. And by the way, we are also in parliament, the very same class of 1976.
Wow. Are the students, I'm getting to the panel, are the students of today learning anything from that? I mean, and I'm going to talk to Mary Metcalf about this. We've seen morals have broken down. Somehow it does not look like they're as forthcoming or as determined as you guys were. You also spent time in Robben Island.
Yes. You see, Felicia, let me just go back to the question of how I feel June 16 should be celebrated. Well, you said celebrate or mourn. You know, I'm going to go back, whether it is a youth day or national day or whatever, that how it is called, I have no problem. But I have a problem with the way June 16 is being commemorated. You cannot, as an African man or an African woman, having lost your children, now decide on that day to open up a festival. Yeah. I have a problem. I have a very serious problem with that. We lost the Hector Petersons. We lost mothers in truth commissions today crying out. Some people went into prison, some people went to exile. Some of us have our families in disarray, mainly because of June 16. maybe for some people sitting somewhere, it will be easy to say that let's open up a festival for their relaxation. It's not a day to relax. It's a day to cry. It's the day to remember. It's the day to form solidarity. It's the day to take out our things. I am not going to change on that one. My children know at school that now on that day, we have to call an assembly, we'll have to pray, we'll have to reflect. And this is how even the very culture of learning in an African child can come back. It is by having to reflect on the day seriously, not on a latamlenze thing.
Sipho, before I get to Sipho, before I come to you, let me get to Sipho. You came up with, you composed the song. Songs came out, books were written. Your song, what does it mean? Sweet June 16 now.
Sweet June 16. Well, Seth has actually taken the words out of my book here. Well, you know, June 16 invokes different emotions in people. Some of us wrote books and some of us wrote songs, and that experience for me meant remembering continuously. And the only way I could do that was actually write that song, June the 16th.
And the words?
I remember the day when I heard the sound of the marching feet from a distance. From the sound of the distance to the sounds of resistance. Then there was fire and insurrection, rocks and stones and action, bullets and pellets from every direction. Someone is dead with a hole in his head. A mother is crying. Another is trying to find out why are the children dying.
As a reporter, as an editor, the stories started coming in through the Star. What were you saying as you saw those stories?
Well, I think I agree with the other panelists that nobody knew what was going to happen, but everyone knew something was going to happen. We knew for a week that there was going to be some form of protest. I don't think anyone realized how big it was. As far as I'm concerned, I was a newspaper editor trying to cover a running story. We were turning out a special edition every hour, on the hour. It was a very difficult story to cover. We were mainly white journalists on most of the papers, and only black journalists could cover that story properly. Yeah. And people like Duma were the people on the front line for us, the photographers, the world reporters, and a few others. But if I can get back to the subject of the celebration, it seems to me everyone will celebrate or remember it as they experienced it or as they are taught to experience it. I would look at it historically. I would say that June 16 and the 2 days afterwards were as important in our history as the storming of the Bastille was to the entire West.
Should June 16 hold any significance for white South Africans?
Was it significant for white South Africans?
Should it be significant?
It certainly is. I would see it, I would think every white should see it as the revolution, the change from oppression to freedom. I would see it as a Frenchman might see Bastille Day.
Mary, our young people today, I know we've talked about possibly a program on values, on morals and standards, where we move with our young people today. What can they learn from that? You today are in charge of education in Gauteng. From June 16, what are your concerns today in education?
I think that the events of June the 16th and the 20 years until we won our freedom was one that was profoundly about human rights. And it was a battle to win human rights for all South Africans, so it's relevant to all South Africans. I think that in what students can learn is that just as for 20 years we have all commemorated June the 16th as a day of mourning, and not only a day of mourning, but also a day to rededicate ourselves to the tasks that lie ahead. If we think back to 86, to 84, to 85, to all of those years where, in a spirit of real defiance, we commemorated. What we need to know is that now, 20 years later, We, in fact, have won our freedom. We face new tasks to which we must dedicate ourselves in a non-frivolous way, but perhaps also in a different way. The new tasks that are
Should we celebrate or commemorate June 16? I see some of the adults here involved in education. If I may have you answer the question for us.
There is no way that we can only celebrate it, and it's becoming an event. June 16 is not an event. It's a process of change. It's a process of building. It's a process of saying we need to do something further. And for the young people who are here now, they need to see it in their curriculum. They need to learn, and they need to say, never, never again shall it happen.
I want to get back to some of the folks who are on the ground there. Murphy, can I talk to you? Should we celebrate it? Should we commemorate it? Should we mourn it?
I think it depends what you will understand by a celebration. Because a celebration, in my understanding of the English I learned in quantification, is that it has scope for both crying and rejoicing. It's about...
So Bantu education was not that bad then, huh?
Well, some of us survived it. Some survived. But I think it's got this scope to rejoice and, in fact, to remember an event through, mourning, if you want to. But I think it's an important debate that people at some point must come to a reasonable a conclusion as to how and what is the best way to do it. And as Harvey Tyson said, this is an event that really impacted on many people and different people in different ways. But the overwhelming sense of June 16th is that of death, is that of destruction. And I think that in terms of celebrating, you'd want to look at June 16 and say, what is it in that event that we should celebrate? And I think that what we are saying needs to be celebrate in that event is, in fact, the manner in which students put aside their self-interest, their personal sense of what they want as individuals, and donated, part of their youth so that the rest of the youth that were to follow were to find, in fact, direction and a better future.
June 16 still seems to continue. Whether we like it or not, the outbursts and outbreaks of violence on campuses bring us to that day. They remind us of that day. How are we going to move forward?
How can we move forward is by taking Seth's advice that we commemorate and mourn. Why I say so? Because it continues, the outbreaks you talk about. We can talk about that June 16 has given blacks access to education, but the education system of South Africa is not yet unchained from the apartheid ethos. Point number one. Secondly is that it is not finance we want to talk about and bursaries only. That is just the access. We want to see a contextualized system of education which relates to the history of South Africa, its past, present, and the way forward. Coming to technicons, what we should understand is that students are a transient group. Today's students will have certain needs in campus. And in most cases, you'll find that black students are disadvantaged. What happens is that our students, the exam, to qualify for exam, you cannot compare with people who have better facilities, better qualified teachers, access to other technological mechanisms of study to be at that par. I think that's what black students have.
I have to sum up now, but I just want to ask a few questions here. Tsietzi's brother, are you here? The name Tsietzi means trouble, in essence.
Sure.
Was it troublesome?
Tsietzi certainly was troublesome. From his teenage, he went about acquiring karate skills. And forever he would come running because he stirred trouble somewhere. But he also stand for this trouble. Either he's come to fetch more manpower to go and sort it out, or he's come for weaponry. But all the time, there's trouble to sort out. Tsietsi has always been Tsietsi. When it happened, and we saw it all in the newspapers, I mean, trying to be part of the public, we all read in the newspapers that he's the man behind it. I mean, to start with, it was nothing to believe at glance, but it sort of started suiting him immediately.
Your last comment?
What I'd just like to say, talking obviously on behalf of myself and my family, is that we will always mourn June the 16th for obvious reasons. Okay, we lost our father. He was a great man. He's a white man who, and as a white family, we actually suffered within the struggle as well. But what my main message, and I know is what he would like me, or what he would be if he was standing here today, he would say to you people to get on with it, to learn about each other. The issue of black and white put behind us now, because it is not an issue anymore. The issue is to learn about each other's cultures, to learn to live with one another, to educate each other and get on with it and build this country, because it's a beautiful country and it can be the best country in the whole world. It really
The way forward.
I think we were saying here it has to be attacked. I'm saying here that it has to be attacked on both fronts. Cultivate the culture of learning, and also at the same time, let's have proper curricula that makes people useful individuals, useful persons within society.
Your last comments?
I think the last thing I'd like to say is that we must remember that putting the cross on the paper or having Mr. Mandela sign the legislation that brought education together has not solved the problem. What it has done is create the opportunity for the people to participate in the solution of the problem. We need events. We need events that will change the mindset not only of the teachers, but of the students, of the community, to ensure that they do not have a syndrome of entitlement. When we see this opportunity created, we must be sure that we believe in ourselves that we can make it. Here's the opportunity, it must be used. I know that people feel that we have been done out of something. That is true. The apartheid system cheated us. The apartheid system cheated black people. But that does not mean that we must now, when things have changed, sit back and say, the apartheid system cheated us and therefore we expect something from them.
That's right, okay. Succinctly?
Felicia, I think as a society, we need to try and inculcate back the culture of learning in our schools. I think we need to try and get our young people to understand they need to spend more hours learning and less hours in the streets. Number two, I think the government, I'm glad that Mary talked about the alumni associations. I think the government has to actively try and fund efforts by those people that want to create alumni associations, because what those associations do, they give our young people role models. It's high time that our young people bezwe ngati rather than the other way around. One of the major problems is because our kids don't have anybody abamsabayo that they can listen to, that they can respect.
Kids are fearless.
Each time you go to the schools, kids carry guns, and the older people our age don't want to enter there because they'll be shot and all those kinds of things. But with alumni associations and with us as the communities coming back to take control in our schools, we'll give them role models and heroes, and I think most of the situations will
what
be
about the
corrected.
Shiros?
And the Shiros too.
I can't say much more than my panelists have, except I would say that all of us, all South Africans, could use this day to do something about dedicating time and effort, as well as self-efforts, into restoring the loss of education of 2 generations. Perhaps we could do something about the day that way. We all have to put something in on this day.
Instilling a culture of learning seems to be coming up all the time, and the government needs to do something about it. That's what I'm hearing.
I think that it's good on June the 16th that we reflect on that, because June 16th is symbolic of the enormous sacrifice that was paid for our freedom. And I think it's appropriate that task of the youth now is to understand that they must honor and respect that sacrifice by the way in which they take forward the victory of our youth. And the way they take forward that victory is in the places where they live and they work, starting with respect for themselves, with respect to those around them, by respecting their teachers, by respecting their classmates. Anything that has to do with the code of conduct and a culture of learning is fundamentally to do with self-respect and respect for others. And if we have that understanding of our democracy, if we have that understanding of building each other, then we can begin to take forward the task of restoring our schools to be places that we are proud of, each one of us.
June 16, 1976, when youth shouldered adult responsibility must never be allowed to happen again. Dancy Chaba Muntsisi, 1976 student activist and leader, said, quote, "The responsibility lies with all of us, students, parents, and government. Then we can call all to remember June 16 for its gains and not its pains." And now, let us hear Wendy Mseleku and friends singing Change. Maybe appropriate.
Child abuse. Today's youth and its values. Have you been exposed to child abuse? Do you think today's youth is embracing the wrong values? Share your thoughts and experiences with Felicia. If you want to join our studio audience, phone us on 011 482 6013. You may also send your comments to FMS Productions, PO Box 29896, Melville 2109.